Hi, my name is Bronwyn Bridges, and I am the CEO and co-founder of PragmaClin. Fun fact about me, I've been able to share PragmaClin's story in over 22 countries in the last year and a half.
So, Bronwyn, before you started PragmaClin, I know that you were a PhD student. I know you still currently are a PhD student. What interested you in healthcare and particularly pharmacy?
Yeah, I've been passionate about healthcare since I was a young girl. My mom has always been a long-term registered nurse. And so I was passionate about that space. She was also working in the dementia care. So I'd been kind of familiarized with it since a young age. Knew I wanted to go into that, but I didn't really think it was probably suited for the physical, hands-on, in a hospital emergency room kind of care. And so I always was looking for kind of a different way that I could improve healthcare. And when I went into my undergrad, I was taking a biology psychology degree, much more in kind of the brain space and understanding that side of it, which is where I really took a passion to that side. And I think from there was when I got first introduced to a Parkinson's patient hands-on. I was volunteering at a physio clinic. I wanted to do something kind of in the physio occupational therapy side. It was less of the emergency room kind of vibe, but still was able to have an impact. And focused on that, focused on really wanting to go into occupational therapy. So I started to write exams for that to be in grad school. And sadly, at the time, I had just also suffered a few concussions from cheerleading, and so my grades were not fantastic, and ultimately got denied from every occupational therapy school across Canada I had applied for. So I knew I really had to think of some other way to keep going in that space. But I also knew myself that if I took a year off school, I probably wasn't going to go back. And so I wanted to continue the education at least for a gap year of school so that I still had the motivation to keep going. And that's when I had researched really across Canada, like researchers who are interested and passionate about Parkinson's, PTSD, concussions, things that I really had a passion about. And I found Dr. John Weber here in Newfoundland. He had studied all three of the exact topics I loved. And I was like, wow, what a perfect fit. So I kind of just sent a cold email to him saying, this is my background, this is my life story. You know, my grades might not look amazing right now, but I promise you I am smart. I just give me some time to recover. And he totally understood what I was going through. So he offered to take me in as a student, which is where I then pivoted really because his background of research space was in the pharmacy school here, which is how I ended up in pharmacy. But it was really to be able to study more so on the Parkinson's disease side, which is how I ended up in Newfoundland.
So, could you tell me a little bit about PragmaClin and how, what is the tech and how do you foresee it helping Parkinson's patients?
Yeah, so like I said, PragmaClin was really born out of this idea of how could we help patients in rural and remote areas have the same access to healthcare, and created a system that would be able to do specialty assessments without a specialist needing to be there. So for us, what that meant was in Newfoundland, with only a handful of doctors that are actually able to do the assessments, we're trying to increase the comfort level of general practitioners or others to be able to do the assessments so that the wait lists aren't so long. And I also currently sit on the board for Parkinson's Society Newfoundland and Labrador. And here right now, the wait times are 4 years to get a diagnosis. That is wild. But also at the same time, we can't blame the healthcare providers either because their wait lists are so long and they already see so many patients. And it's truly just we have an aging population, it's continuing to grow, and we don't have people going into this field. It's the chronic condition space, so not a lot of people find it as this overjoyous thing because you can't necessarily cure people. You can give them better quality of life, but we don't see as many people going into this specialty space. And so the question is how can you then, if you can't bring in more doctors, how can you at least improve the capacity of the doctors that are here or people who are willing to assess patients but aren't currently comfortable doing that? With Parkinson's, there's like one drug that's typically used. It's levodopa or dopa in general. And it has really great effects in terms of, stopping tremor or increasing the speed in which you can do things. But it also has a lot of detrimental side effects in terms of having dyskinesias and the quality of life. It's really kind of playing on a teeter-totter, we'll say.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to really play a nice balanced game. But because you can only get in to see a doctor so often, you also then in terms can't adjust the meds as much as you maybe need to. And so when we first created it, it was for that rural remote research. But as we started to put our idea out there, it became like kind of obvious to us that this also has a place in an urban clinic where you can improve the amount of patients that are able to come in without taking away specialty time, and also increase the scope of a general practitioner who is in an urban setting but doesn't see these patients currently. We also wanted to increase the accuracy of these assessments. Right now, a statistic is that 25% of cases are misdiagnosed or mistreated, and it's truly just because it's subjective. So if a patient comes to see you and a patient comes to see me, they might get an entirely different assessment, and that's just something that has been known forever, but it's an international scale for assessing Parkinson's patients, and it's kind of been the standard. So we will say digitized the international assessment and made it so that it is more objective, has better accuracy, but also then with that short 10-minute assessment that we can do with our cameras, then we can provide better information to a clinician to make a treatment decision at the end. And so our setup is 3D cameras that a patient comes in, stands in front of. They're prompted and guided through a series of tests such as finger tapping, walking, sitting, standing. And then the score is provided in real time, almost like a report card. And the report card is given to a clinician who can then decide, okay, this is how we're going to adjust your meds, your physical therapy, or whatever it might be, and carry on. And that way you can see more patients more accurately, and also hopefully then increase that so the nurse can also make the treatment decisions as well.
So talk a little bit about your partner, Gord. And I know that, you know, between the two of you, you have a lot of differences. I mean, whether it's, you know, age, experience, gender. And so together you make a really diverse team. Can you tell me a little bit of what does that look like, and how has that affected how you organize or grow PragmaClin, or just the work that you do?
Yeah. It has been definitely a whirlwind for sure. And I think that from the outside, so many people are like, how does that work? You know? I think we've used it as like an advantage in a lot of ways. He is phenomenal at writing. I am not a writer. I will speak until the day ends, but not writing. And he's the total opposite. He's like, I have Parkinson's. I can't get up in front of a mic, not ever. And so I think from day one, we were kind of trying to navigate, and definitely rocky in the first few months, trying to figure out, you know, the power of who has a final say in something. If there's only the two of us, if we don't come to an agreement, what are we going to do? But he was super respectful in the beginning of just saying, you know, just because you're younger, just because our genders are not the same, I'm going to respect whatever decision your final choice is, because I think that you have the right mindset. And I think that was kind of a turning point for us. And when I really like stepped up, took CEO and he took COO, I think we have very different perspectives, for sure. But it's been I think a blessing for the business. It may seem tense at some points, but I think it's always with complete love at the end of it, and wouldn't change anything for the world. I think we have the best co-founder relationship possible.
So, Bronwyn, you are one of Atlantic Canada's top 30 under 30 innovators. Can you tell me what it's like to be a young female CEO in a health tech company? What has your experience been like?
Yeah, I think if I were to sway to the benefits side, it is that I think I come with a lot of the new, young perspective that's maybe a little more fresh in a space that has not been fresh in a while, especially. I mean, working in chronic conditions and being under 30, I'm like coming to it with a completely different lens of how we can put tech to make all of this better. What it has done in the positive side is allowed us to have a lot of wins through pitch competitions, conferences, etc., that are focused on young, under 30 students, etc. And so that's gotten us a lot of global traction because we've been able to apply for those. If we look at the downfalls, though, there's definitely a lot. I mean, I show up and everyone's like, that's not the CEO. I'm like, yes, yes, it is. But I think I've just learned to take it kind of with pride. You'll probably, if you ever see me around, I normally have a colorful pantsuit on if we're at a work event, and it's kind of my staple way of people remembering who I am in a room or standing out. Um, and I also try and, just like I said, be authentically me. So, I mean, I've been on due diligence calls and had investors be like, "This was so refreshing. You cracked a joke in the middle of a due diligence session," and I've never had anyone crack a joke. And I just think, like, life is just so short. I don't know why we're pretending to be people we aren't. And so I try and just be different. And some people may not enjoy that, but I think that I would not still be here and enjoying what I'm doing every day if I was trying to be someone I wasn't. Having more young female in STEM out there sharing their stories is the reason that there will be more young female in STEM out there sharing their stories. So I just try and put my face out there, my voice out there when I can, so that I can inspire some others as well to do it.
You've really explained how, Gord has been an ally for you, and really, helped to kind of amplify you and make you the kind of confident CEO. What advice would you have for others who are looking to support other, equity priority groups in becoming, in leadership roles? What would you advise them in terms of what is an effective ally? What does that look like?
I think an effective ally is also someone who's just not an ally when they're in front of a camera, in front of a mic, but it's really the person who champions you when you're not there, when you're not in a room, and they're able to support you in different ways. So, Gord, for example, I always hear kind of secondhand, like, "Oh my gosh, Gord was saying all these amazing things about you the other day when you weren't there." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, my heart." Like, that just makes me so happy. It makes me realize, like, what I'm doing is worth it. I'm making him proud. And I think the biggest thing is, if you're going to be an ally, it's just not saying, "I want to be an ally, I'm going to be an ally, I am." It's listening to the problems that are happening and actually acting on that is a completely different thing. And Gord, from day one, an example is he's always listened to what I said was a problem, and he's made sure that I didn't have to kind of go back and relive things, because he actively listened the first time and was able to support me through that forward. So I think if we want to bring more allies in, it's making sure it's not just saying, but actually doing and following through on those actions. And a lot of that comes from the active listening piece.
Bronwyn, thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing your journey with PragmaClin.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.